Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Stephanie Laser. I know I look like Britney Spears right now with this headset on. I'm really happy about it. This is the first time I've ever had this, and it makes me feel really happy and really lucky. I'm the worldwide head of publisher ad tech, so I help our customers with monetization in websites, mobile applications, and CTV applications. And here we're going to talk a little bit about streamlining ad monetization with Prebid Server Deployment on AWS.
I am Mike Olson, Software Development Manager for Ad Tech and MarTech Solutions. So I manage the team that built the solution we'll be talking about today.
Awesome. And oh, that's a picture of us, so you can connect the name to the face. All right, so our agenda today, first we're going to talk a little bit about the customer problem. Then we're going to give a quick introduction to Prebid, what Prebid is, how it helps with ad monetization. Then Mike's going to go into an overview of Prebid Server Deployment on AWS, our solution. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what's next, like what are we developing, what are we working on, how are we going to evolve this product. All right, cool. So many of you might know that more and more omni-channel content providers are connecting directly with ad platforms. So folks like Disney are rolling out direct connectivity with ad platforms in the form of things like Drax. Paramount Plus does direct to ad platforms with something called Conduit. And we have even retail media networks that are looking to build kind of their own SSPs and direct connectivity with DSPs and SSPs to help with their monetization. Now there's a huge amount of advantages to owning your own connections with ad platforms. That includes transparent auction mechanisms, so knowing exactly how that auction is run and being able to have control over that. It's the ability to modify decision logic. So I'll give you an example. I used to be at a publisher, I used to be at News Corp, and we used to modify the decisioning logic of our Prebid server in order to prioritize all deal IDs, whether they were coming in through Magnite or whether they were coming through Index. We made sure that all of them could compete, and that was inside the code of Prebid, and we made that customization ourselves to help with our ad monetization. It also gives you full ownership of your log level data. So right now, if a lot of you use kind of legacy ad servers, you might find that that log level data comes in batch. And it comes in when it feels like, and it makes it really hard for you to make any real-time decisions. So if you own your own ad connections, you have full ownership of that log level data, which means you can stream it into your existing infrastructure and tools. You can also use it to optimize towards product performance. So an example of that is, say you have a subscription paywall, right? And you wanted to open the paywall for high value users, or you wanted to close the paywall for low advertising value users, depending on propensity to subscribe and all of the different ways in which you could monetize your user. So that data really helps to optimize that product performance. And in a time period where more and more of these like content experiences and product experiences are driven by things like generative AI, having that data in real time and having ownership and control of that data is going to really help you power your business. Now, what exactly is Prebid Server? So not everybody knows what Prebid Server is. Prebid Server is the most popular unified auction solution that exists in market today. So it is essentially based on OpenRTB. It is connectors. Those connectors run a transparent auction. It is completely open source. So it is worked on by the ad tech community. So anybody can go on to their GitHub. Anybody can go on and make changes to the and contribute into the open source community. And it's also configurable. So this suits the needs of large and small companies. So you can change it, modify it, configure it to exactly what you need. Now, we had a lot of customers that were coming to us and they were saying, hey, we want to deploy Prebid Server, but the infrastructure is difficult, right? We don't have experience with operating high volume, low latency workloads, and we want to make sure that our load balancing is right. We want to make sure that it follows all of kind of the well-architected principles of AWS. We also had a lot of customers that were like, we want to build an SSP, right? And we need a starting point to run that SSP, and Prebid Server gives them that, that ability to do that. So introducing our capital S solution, that is Prebid Server Deployment on AWS. You get to deploy Prebid Server, scalable, cost-efficient manner, all on your own AWS infrastructure. So end-to-end infrastructure, you're hosting Prebid Server, production-grade availability, scalability, low latency. See how excited they are about this, right? All for all over 100,000 TPS. Now, because this is in your own VPC, you have ownership of all your operational and business data. So Prebid Server metrics are available in AWS Glue catalog for seamless integration with various clients such as Athena, Redshift, and Amazon SageMaker. So what are the benefits here? So the benefits are that it's scalable. It's made to handle what I mentioned before, high volume, low latency workloads, and a large volume of requests. It's also a cost-effective deployment. You have full control over your decisioning logic, like I mentioned before, and ownership of your transaction data. It's a simple integration with BI tools, so there's many different partners that we have that you guys see around the halls of the expo. Many of those partner solutions can integrate directly with our Prebid Server solution. Also with AWS tools like Amazon QuickSight, QuickSight with Q, and like I said, the code base is completely open source and community driven, so you know it's fair, you know the auction is your own, and you have complete control over it.
All right, so what do you actually get with Prebid Server Deployment on AWS? We get a prepackaged, production-ready deployment of Prebid Server that is fully supported and maintained by AWS. The solution itself is completely free. Like Stephanie mentioned, you do deploy it into your own AWS account. So the only thing you actually end up paying for are the services you consume while you're running the solution. The solution is fully open source and licensed under Apache 2. It is available out on GitHub. So your team can inspect the code, poke around in there, make customizations as necessary. But if there is something you want to customize in there, we'd be interested to hear what you're thinking about changing, see if we can evolve the solution together. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that the project itself is a CDK project. And it's also available as a pre-generated CloudFormation template. The solution does come with a full set of documentation, which we call the implementation guide. And it is held to the same high standards as AWS services. So this means it goes through rigorous security testing and load testing. And you'll get continued support and updates from the development team that created the solution. This would include security updates and new features. So before we dive into the architecture, I just wanted to go over some of the challenges we had in mind while designing the solution. You can scan this QR code. It will take you to the architecture page out on our implementation guide. So given the nature of real-time bidding, we needed the solution to handle the high volume of traffic many of our publishing customers can see, as well as keeping the latency low. We wanted to make sure the auctions are running fast, ads are displaying quickly. We heard from many of our customers that they wanted full control over the data, like Stephanie mentioned, so they can do reporting, insights, decisions, things like that. We needed the Prebid server to be easily configurable. And then we needed the solution as a whole to be easily customizable. So we recognize that a lot of our customers have different restrictions and guidelines for what they can actually do in their AWS account. So we wanted to identify what a lot of those things were and actually build them into the solution as configuration options, reducing the need to actually modify the source code of the solution. And then, of course, we needed the whole thing to be secure and observable. So we're going to walk through kind of the life of a pre-bid auction request to get an idea of what the architecture looks like. So we'll start on the left here and kind of move over. When a user loads a web page on your website, the web page will load up Prebid.js. Prebid.js is another open source library provided by prebid.org, and it will handle most of the client-side heavy lifting, get the auction request ready, and sending it over to the Prebid server. There are some other header bidding wrappers you could use on the client side, but for the purpose of this, we'll assume Prebid.js. So the request to the Prebid server contains all the information about the user, the page request, which ad slots you'd like to conduct the auction for. There's quite a bit more that can happen at this point, like user syncing and cookie syncing, things like that. So next up, the bid request will come into CloudFront. We are using CloudFront to get the request into the AWS network as quickly as possible to keep latency low. We also have AWS WAF integrated here for extra security. This is one of the portions of the solution that is customizable. So if you have a different CDN you'd like to use, that is an option. Also, if you're expecting most of your traffic to kind of originate near the region that you're deploying this into, you could potentially leave this out of the deployment. It'll reduce the cost of the deployment. All right, so next up, the request will come into the load balancer, which will then distribute the request across the ECS cluster that's actually hosting the Prebid server itself. So the ECS cluster is hosting the Java version of a Prebid server. We are running a Fargate version of ECS here, which is the serverless version. It'll keep your maintenance load low. We have auto-scaling enabled here. So we have tested this cluster to scale to well over 100,000 requests per second. So the scaling will start with as low as 2 tasks to keep costs pretty low, but it'll scale as high as your AWS account quota will allow. And once you have the solution deployed, you can kind of play with the cluster settings here in the console if you'd like as well. All right, from there, the Prebid server will actually conduct the auction, and it will fan out all the bid requests to all of your bidders. So we're only showing one bidder here. You're probably going to have more than that. But once the auction is finished, all the bids come in. Some bids may even time out, depending on what your settings are. Once all that's back, it'll flow all the way back through here to the user, where Prebid.js will pick things back up. What happens at this point kind of depends on your setup. If you're using an ad server, you might submit the results to the ad server, where it will evaluate other demand sources for the ad slots and make the ultimate decision on which ad gets rendered. You can also bypass the ad server, or if you're not using an ad server, you can just render the ad directly as well. So that's pretty much it for the life of the Prebid request. The other major portion of the architecture down here on the bottom involves the Prebid server metrics. So Prebid server is constantly emitting a whole slew of metrics. This is stuff like how long are the requests taking, how long are the requests taking per bidder, what are your average prices that you're seeing, stuff like that. So those metrics will flow out into an EFS volume, and then we'll be periodically transferring those logs to an S3 bucket using AWS Data Sync. At that point, AWS Glue job will pick it up, do an ETL, and ultimately the metrics end up in the AWS Glue catalog. And at that point, you can access your logs metrics through Athena. The nice thing about Athena now is you can hook pretty much any BI tool up to your metrics through Athena, or you can query them directly. We do have a whole bunch of sample queries out on our implementation guide to give you an idea of the kinds of things you could query. Last but not least, up top here, CloudWatch, metrics, alarms, runtime logs. So how do you actually get started? Well, the easiest way to deploy the stack is to use the pre-generated CloudFormation templates. You can scan this QR code here, which will take you to our landing page for the solution, which gives you access to the CloudFormation templates. If you'd rather deploy through a CDK project, or if you just want to start poking around in the code first, you can visit our GitHub repo. So the link to the GitHub repo will be available in the implementation guide in the developer guide section. So at deploy time, there are a few options you can specify at that time. One of which we already talked about, which is whether you want to use CloudFormation or not. So that would happen at deploy time. Another thing you can specify there is if you'd like to use our Prebid Server Docker container, or if you'd like to provide your own. We definitely recommend you use the one we provide. It's fully tested. We know it works. But if you want to do something like maybe you're creating a custom Prebid server module for analytics or something like that, then it might make sense for you to actually package your own Docker container and specify it at deploy time. So once the stack is deployed, then it's time to move on to actually configuring your Prebid server itself. Prebid server has tons of configuration options. It's extremely flexible. One of the great things about using Prebid server. But we do supply a sensible default configuration file out of the box. The only thing you really need to set up right away are your actual bidders. So with Prebid server, it's interesting the way it works. The bidders actually submit or create an open source adapter, which actually gets incorporated into the Prebid server project. Each of those adapters is responsible for making the call out to the bidders when the requests fan out. So each of those adapters has their own option set, so you will need to contact your ad partner to get all that information. All right, at that point, we'll move on to actually setting up the client and the ad server. So client, that's the Prebid.js that we talked about earlier. You mostly just need to set it up to a point at the Prebid server to conduct the auction. But like Prebid server, there's all kinds of configuration stuff you can mess with. Ad server, if you're using an ad server, there might be some things to set up, line items, stuff like that. Prebid.org has a great rundown on all that stuff. At that point, you should be good to go, and you can move on to monitoring the deployment. So what's next? Well, the solution was just released this summer, so we are in the process of collecting a lot of feedback from our early customers and users and incorporating those into the roadmap. We've already incorporated a few things into the v1.1 version, which was released recently. And out of the box, we do only support banner ads, but we are actively working on adding support for video, AMP, and mobile. And obviously, making Prebid server deployment and operation easy has tremendous value. But like Stephanie mentioned, one of the things our customers are really interested in is a lot of the real-time decisioning. So that's where we want to be moving to next. In order to do that, we're looking at building in a transactional data layer, which would contain records of all your ad transactions in order to enable some of those decisions. And what kind of decisions are we talking about? Well, Stephanie already mentioned a bunch of great examples earlier, but it could be some other things, some kinds of traffic shaping. You can take a look at the request when it comes through. You can say, for this type of user, this page, this ad slot, which bidders do I need to send this to? If you can pare it down, you might be able to save some money and time during the auction. We're in the early phases of defining some of these features. So if you're interested, definitely hit us up, and we'd love to talk to you about it. And that's it for us. We'll hang out kind of on the side here after the session if you guys want to chat.
Thanks, guys.